Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
Today we're covering the very first Spider-Man movie by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire.
Yes.
Just simply called Spider-Man.
Yes.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Now, in this particular trilogy, Spider-Man's origins are brought to the big screen for the first time in this first of the three movies as Peter Parker gains his spidey powers to become the famous webslinger.
Yes. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and little pause videos.
And the remaining three movies soon to become the remaining four, because as we heard from Phoenix, there's going to be a Spider-Man 4 now.
Yes.
With Tobey Maguire. Yay!
Yay! Never have too much Spider-Man.
This was my favorite Spider-Man trilogy until Tom Holland.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna speak with this in the same vein of loving it as I did when it originally came out. It was one of the first superhero movies to really not only respect the character, respect the comics that the characters came from, the source material, but to stick to it and honor the fans who love the characters and love reading them.
And everything comes to life spectacularly, no pun intended.
Sorry, just keep.
Right. And it's more right here when we watch it, we kind of realize back then this was the stand of the superhero movies, kind of have it be a dramedy. And then it got gritty, now the lighthearted again, now the action, and so it goes to different phases. But for here, this one played out more like a drama. It had its comedic moments, but it was more of a dramatic storytelling. It wasn't dark and gritty like the Amazing Spider-Man one with Andrew Garfield, but it took the story seriously while still keeping its fun element in. It didn't really get dark until the villains came in.
Right. Very true. And you had your cast of characters you used to see. You had Aunt May, you had Uncle Ben until he was taken out, and he's normally done in the comics when he's killed. Of course, you had Peter Parker, you had Mary Jane, you had the standard Spider-Man villains, you had Harry, you had just about everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course, Norman Osborn, I guess if you want to add that.
Well, I said Harry Osborn, so I assumed you would know Norman was in there if Harry was in it. But yeah, she had Harry and Norman.
Yeah. And, they kept the villains for all, might as well say for all three movies, they kept all of the standard, most popular villains for Spider-Man.
And for this one, it was Green Goblin.
Right.
One of your favorites.
Yes. And this was the first time seen at the time the movie came out, seeing Green Goblin on the big screen, before he became a favorite years later for the animated series for me, was William Dafoe portraying him.
Fantastically. I see William Dafoe in other movies and was wondering how this was going to all play out, and he was brilliant as Green Goblin.
Right. And the entire storyline for Green Goblin was really, really interesting, because they still tried to stick to the source material for his origin, but you could still tell they had added some things for the film itself, like, he still cared about his son, even though he had kind of gone off the deep end when it came to this persona he had being Green Goblin and taking out Spider-Man. At the end of the day, he still cared about his son. He was never really cruel to him. He just kind of put on this ideal he had, how he's supposed to act. He should emulate it to be successful, and it really wasn't the best advice. But aside from that, he did care about his son a lot, despite the villainous part of him.
Right, definitely. What really sticks out about this particular version of the Spider-Man story is Tobey Maguire was able to portray that wholesomeness. He had a more quiet presentation of the character.
Right.
And a more softer approach.
Right.
Than Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland. Tom Holland's just spazzing all over the place,
Yeah.
and you love
well,
it.
Who's this guy?
Yes, you love it. And each one has managed to give us a different type of Spider-Man. And his, again, was more of the wholesome, quiet, reflecting, morals and value-driven character.
Especially because of Uncle Ben.
And especially, and especially really wanting to make sure that his aunt was, she was fine, he wasn't worrying her, that she would be okay after her husband passing away, because literally she's the only family he has left, and she's the only family he has left.
Right.
And that was always, for all three movies, a real focus. One thing that did lack, unfortunately, in this Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 3 was diversity. In this one, as well as in the Garfield. But with the Tom Holland trilogy, or maybe 4 movies, I'm not sure, you have it. So I would say, for me, that's the only thing that was lacking. There was no diversity. The movie was great. The acting was fantastic. They stuck to the source material. We had our regular Stan Lee cameo.
Yeah.
And this movie was really a joy to watch. As you said, it was fun. It was drama. It was all these things wrapped in it. And I want to point out how when I first saw this in the theater, and I know I've probably said this a million times, people who know me know this story, but I remember leaving the theater. We were having to leave early, and it was the end of the movie, and we were trying to stand up and watch it and not miss it on our way out. And Stan Lee is speaking over what's going on the screen, and he says something that really has been that was pivotal for me and has always been on my mind ever since in everything I do. And he said that you always have a choice, and you always have a choice to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And it hit me like a ton of bricks when I heard it, and I've never forgotten it. And this is really, honestly, from the Spider-Man movie, is one of the ways that I live my life.
Right.
Always thinking about what I do and making a choice to do the right thing, knowing that I have a choice, and always making sure that I treat that choice with care and seriousness. Mm-hmm. And that knowing that my actions and the things I say and do have a consequence. And as he said in the beginning of the movie, we all have a responsibility.
Right.
You know, he says, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
And I'm probably not quoting it right, guys, but the point is that really left an impression on me more than the responsibility quote.
Right.
So thank you, Stan Lee.
Right. And for me, this movie was the first time I was introduced to Spider-Man in general. Before the animated series or the comics or anything that came later, this was first. Mm-hmm. And since then,
you got to see it with friends.
Right. Not just the first movie, but the second movie as well at the theaters. And I have loved Spider-Man ever since then and wanted to know more about the character and get into Marvel and everything because of the movie. He wasn't the first superhero I learned about, but he was the first. Right. He was the first Marvel character I got into, so he was still impactful.
And lastly, Marvel was at the top of his game in terms of beating everyone else out at the time, making superhero movies that we loved and wanted to see, and that gave us what we were getting in print in a live action format, sticking to the source material and making us happy.
Right.
So again, thank you, Stan Lee, for bringing all this about when you were still here.
Yes.
And creating this legacy where now we're going to be seeing superhero movies until the end of time, and we won't be longing for them and wishing they would be made. Now they are being made.
Right.
So, if you've seen Spider-Man,
which you probably have,
yes, let us know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of Tobey Maguire's performance? Is he your favorite Spider-Man? How does he rank amongst the three who have done the role so far? And if you haven't seen it, you can buy this movie anywhere. You can get great prices on it everywhere, online and in stores.
Right.
And if you haven't seen it, come on,
yeah.
You gotta watch it. You gotta know where Tom Holland's source material comes from, where he decides how he's gonna portray the character versus how Tobey Maguire did it and Andrew Garfield did it.
Right. And one last thing we definitely need to mention is, as you just mentioned, how Spider-Man impacted us watching the movie. It definitely impacted a lot of people who made other superhero content outside of Marvel, especially from My Hero Academia, was just, and people just making characters that are just Spider-Man in different skins or different countries or different nationalities or anything. It all started with this movie. You can see that it still makes an impact because you can still see it being referenced and inferred and inspiring so many people around the world when they make their superhero stories.
And even in another superhero movie we talked about, Ant-Boy, we mentioned it was influenced as well.
Right.
So yes, you're absolutely right. And we're just really grateful for this character, and the characters being brought out to the forefront of pop culture with this movie.
Right.
So
be sure to like, subscribe, and notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and multiple pause videos.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm Oscar Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.